Hey everyone. We're back with a new episode of With Love Soleil. And first, just wanted to show this. I don't know why, but it is a pink rose quartz heart. It's so cute. Anyways, that's that. um, but what is present for me to talk a little bit about today is the fact that life itself is not linear. Life is not linear, and I think that our brains want things to be linear. And we sort of have this expectation that success and healing and life itself just kind of has this like upward trajectory. And so it's predictable. And the fact of the matter is, it just is not realistic to think that. It's not realistic to think that things are going to happen in a linear way. And the truth of the matter is, we exist multidimensionally. We exist in many different ways all at the same time. And our mind might be the one thing that kind of is running the show. So we don't always realize that we're existing multidimensionally all the time. But even in any moment, we're existing energetically, we're existing simultaneously as sort of past versions of ourselves, meeting present versions of ourselves and blending into future versions of ourselves. We exist in the physical body and in the physical reality where reality is objective and it's not being filtered through our processes and through our minds. So all of the time we exist multidimensionally. Now, not everybody's always aware of that necessarily. Most people, I would say, probably are not, because they're so stuck in their minds. They don't realize that there are many realities happening at once and that their reality is not the only one, which breeds heavy narcissism, right? Because I think that's why narcissism has gotten to be such a kind of a coined term in our society more and more, because people realize that we all exist in our own reality. And the one who is less tethered to their thoughts, who has mastered their mind, is the one who's closer to objective reality than those who are swayed emotionally and lost in their emotions and lost in their thoughts and not even like present with what's actually happening in reality. And so when you can be present with what's actually happening in reality, you see that things exist multidimensionally. And it's interesting to then be someone who's kind of self-aware in that way, that you can recognize the objective reality that's happening simultaneous to your own sort of inner reality, be it emotionality or whatever else, in other ways that we filter reality. And then the mind that wants to kick in with its like dramatics and add its flair. And all of this is happening all in the same moment, right? And so when you can sit with someone, you can witness this happening within them, but them not be aware of it. It's actually really interesting, because you see mirrored back to you how we all exist in some way. I think the idea and why I push self-mastery as such a theme for success is that if and as you master yourself, you start to realize the separation between you and reality. And so you sort of close the gap on the many ways that you're existing in one moment, and instead are able to be present with there being an objective reality at all, in that your response to it doesn't change the fact that there is an objective reality. And all of that happening then while life goes on, right? And so in each moment, life is progressing onward. And in our minds, we like to think, and it would be easier if it were true that life was moving on in a more predictable way, that the mind could kind of foresee and plan for and all of these things, but it just doesn't work that way. And anybody who's been on any kind of healing journey at all, whether you're kind of intentionally on your healing journey, or maybe even like, say, the grief journey or other journeys that kind of force you on that path, you start to see that it's not linear. It's not linear. And it's like we think that progress looks a certain way, and it doesn't. And sometimes progress looks like going back to revisit things you've felt in the past, or things that you kind of thought you got over, or whatever it is, right? And so we think that this is going backwards, when in fact, really what it is that your energetics are saying you missed this piece here, right? So if your true intention is to heal from something, but you miss this piece back here, you have to go back and get it. You have to go back and sort of reclaim either, say, that part of you, or that aspect that you didn't actually heal, that you just kind of more glossed over, or whatever, ways that we don't move forward in wholeness, we're going to need to revisit at some point. And it looks from the sort of surface level like you're going backwards, but really it's a reclamation of your wholeness, because the healing journey can't go on without the pieces that you glossed over. And though maybe in some space and time when that piece came to be for you to look at it, you maybe weren't available to that, or maybe you weren't in a place where you emotionally even could handle the capacity of that, right? Because again, things come when they come. So it's not like we can decide, okay, I'm ready now, look at this part of my grief. Like it's going to be there when it's there. And if you're not ready for that, that's okay. The healing process will circle you back, because the healing process wants you to move forward in wholeness. Success wants you to move forward in wholeness. Your personal journey, your spiritual journey wants you to move forward in wholeness. And so if there are pieces of you that maybe you weren't ready to address back then, or maybe now at least you are more ready to address now in this version of you, it's going to circle the block back. And it's actually really beautiful how life does that, because it says, we want all of you to come forward. We don't want you to have like forgotten about this major piece of you because you weren't ready to address whatever kept it boxed in at the time that it came up for it to be healed. So we're going to run it back so you can make sure that you get that piece, and because you're available now to the healing or the fire of self-mastery in whatever capacity otherwise that it's going to require for you to get to this piece. So there's so many parts to it. There are so many moving parts. I know for me on my journey, like things will happen that'll like really stand out, but they don't have a context yet. And so I kind of always know like, okay, this thing always really stood out for me. Maybe it's one sentence that someone said and it has always stood out for me. I knew in some way, shape, or form it was going to circle back. I have no idea how long it's going to take for that. It might be 10 years. It has been 10 years or longer where someone will have said something or a specific moment that really just stood out to me, that kind of presents itself to me in my energetic memory at certain times as almost a way of being like, hey, it's not time yet, but don't forget about this key thing here because it's going to make sense at some point. Or whatever it is, that things are going to happen out of order, so to speak, in a way that later on you can be like, that's what that was. That's what that was. And it's like, crazy how things line up, because it's like, how did this person know to say this thing to me at this point when I was this age, when I had no context at all for what they said, but it stood out for me energetically. And here I am decades later, and it actually finally makes sense. And somehow they knew those words I was going to need, future me was going to need, even if little me in the moment or asleep me in the moment wasn't available to what was actually being said. And it is the most magical, incredible thing, the way that life connects these dots for you. And where if something stands out, you can almost guarantee at some point it's going to make sense some way, somehow. And it doesn't make sense how it all comes together, but in a way it does, because what you start to see is the way that life is always lining up for you beyond what you even realize it's doing that. And it makes it all the more magical because you just feel so supported, right? If life can give you something at this point in your timeline and decades later, it actually comes to context for all of the things that came between when it first came and when it actually made sense. If that's possible, you're good. You really can lean into the fact that whatever force is painting this masterpiece where future you knew that you were going to need this. And so there was this thing that stood out for some reason. Like, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. And while the awakened journey is not the easy one, it will never be the easy one, because facing yourself and sitting in the discomfort that also comes along with the nonlinear formation of reality, it's not fun. It's not fun. It's exhausting. It feels very alone at times. When you have actual accountability over your life, especially any form of radical accountability over your life, you look at your stuff You look at your stuff, you look at the ways that you contribute to your own reality. You look at the ways that you make yourself the victim. You look at the ways that you hold yourself back. And it's uncomfortable. You know, sometimes the context that comes from the thing that was said decades ago isn't like magical and fun. You know, it's not always magical. It's pretty always magical how it lines up. We got, we'll give it that. But like the lesson is like, wow, almost more so because you've carried the lesson with you for however long and it didn't click until this moment when you needed it. And then you're like, damn, yeah, that's what that was. Now it makes sense. And it's not fun because I have been missing this the whole time, you know, or whatever it is. It's a lot. It's a lot. The awakened journey is not for the weak. And I think that's why so many people aren't on it. It's a lot easier to just stay asleep and to kind of close your third eye off and keep fluoride starination and, you know, stay asleep and just not have to see the truths of not only the world and the much evil and wickedness and darkness that runs the world, but of yourself. You know, it's like, damn, there's a lot to it. There is a lot of layers to being multidimensional. And when you really take an honest look at that and how much we get in our own ways, like, bro, it's so true. We all do it. We all stand in our own way. And you hate to see it. And other people usually can see it better than we because we deny ourselves that truth because it hurts to see it. It's not fun. When you realize, like, even in the name of you think you're doing something good and you actually look at it in a real way, you realize that you're literally just sabotaging yourself. It's a lot. It's a lot. Accountability, I talk about a lot because there is a very heavy component of accountability that must be present to truly be on the awakened path. But accountability is not for the weak. And there are a lot of people who do not take accountability over their lives because it would require a lot of moments in time opening up of like, damn, I did that. I said that. I took that right when I know I just needed to take the left and it would have been so much easier. Like, man, I've created so much extra work for myself. I've leaked my power so many times when I didn't need to leak my power. You know, I put other people before myself, whatever it is, all of the ways that we stand in our own way. And in the name of righteousness or in the name of niceness or kindness or being good to others, you know, what do they say? The path to hell is paved with good intentions. And so you can be the most well-intended person and still, as a result of that, be standing in your own way. And it gets heavy. It gets heavy to really look at that because then it's like it really questions your whole idea of morality. You know, you think that you're a good person because you put other people before yourself. Well, actually, that was a self-sabotage. And yet it's what you need. It's the lesson you needed to learn, you know? And so what I have learned and I'm really actively practicing is not being hard on myself. Cause I know for me, I can be really hard on myself when it seems so obvious once you awake to the truth of you or life or whatever. And you're like, it was the keys and the codes were present the whole time and I was just ignoring them. It can be easy to like get hard on yourself in those moments. But the fact of the matter is the fact that you had your realization at all is more than most. So you have to be able to give yourself a lot of credit and a lot of grace and give yourself your flowers, because it doesn't matter when you awaken. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter. Time doesn't exist in this space. In the evolution of the soul, what is time? You know, one shift, one change, one deep self-realization can change everything in that moment. But you won't be able to even have that moment until your spirit is ready. So the whole work and the whole plan and the whole path is just to prepare your spirit and your awareness to be the one that can bear the burden of the human experience, which on one hand incredibly magical and mind-blowingly like beautiful in so many ways, even the hard parts. But there are definitely hard parts. There are definitely some freaking hard parts. Losing people, death, hard part. Realizing that you've been standing in your own way in the name of being a good person your whole life, a hard part. You know, awakening to your own habits that, you know, you've been telling yourself is what makes you a good person when really it's actually maybe not quite that, you know. It's kind of the acceptance of like, even what you think of as being a good person is maybe not what you think it is. Because I would say, and more so these days, I put being real over being a good person. Because sometimes being a good person means like being nice to everybody and like overflowing in niceness. But is nice better than real? If you have to lie to be nice, are you still a good person? You know, and this is where there's like a lot of like, are you ready to really question the core of your experience and your existence comes in? And that's when it gets hard. Because it's like, well, all this time I thought I was a good person because I lied to people in the name of being nice. And maybe that wasn't like the highest option. It kind of seems like it, right? Like we want to like love people and like, let's lead with love, but let's lead with honest love. Let's lead with love that tells the truth in a way that's gentle and graceful and skillful. There's a way to do that. You don't have to be mean, love. You don't have to be mean and tell the truth, mean or real. But honesty, I believe, when you're honest with people, you give them the highest opportunity to awaken. And so while we can't awaken people, and we wouldn't want to because that's not your business, your honesty with them, your willingness to tell them when you're seeing from that perspective we were talking about, that you don't see for yourself, when you can share from that perspective, you give them the highest opportunity to awaken. And it doesn't always feel good. We know that for ourselves, you know, like, I know you think you're doing this for this reason, and I just want to give it to you for this perspective. It might not be what you think. And that stuff is earth shattering. We all know it. Anybody who's on the path, and we do that for ourselves, it's earth shattering to have your whole kind of worldview collapse in the realization that what you thought you were doing as a good person was actually standing in the way of your own realization, or was keeping people from awakening because you weren't telling them the truth. So there's a lot to it, and it's a slow unwinding. That's why awakening, you know, you have kind of like an awakening, so to speak, where you sort of, I like to see it, for me personally, it was me sort of taking on my assignment, but the awakening is lifelong. Awakening is a lifestyle. Awakening is a continued willingness to see reality objectively and not according to what your inner space says that it is, or your mind says that it is, or the ways that you lie to yourself says that it is. It's a path, it's a journey. And it takes tools, it takes time, it takes radical honesty and radical accountability. And at times it's heavy. It's freaking heavy, you know, like the crown is heavy because you set yourself up a little higher, and you see a little different, and you move a little different, and it's beautiful, but it's alone a lot. You know, it sets you apart. Awakening sets you apart in a world where most people have chosen not to awaken. And so it's like, how do you move around in a world where you see above the tomfoolery, but people who don't even know where you are? And how do you tell someone, oh, I've awakened, you guys, so listen to me? You know, it's like, you can't. It's like telling a kindergartner, you know, what senior year is like. It's like, they don't even, kindergartners just trying to play. Do you get to play with the blocks? You know, that's what a kindergartner is going to ask. Do you get to play with blocks? Do my Barbies come? Like, they're not there yet. You know, there's a gap between where they are and what they're available to understanding, and what their life experience has, what understanding their life experience has called forward for them. And whatever happens between then and 12th grade, right? A lot. which is why life experience itself is the key contributing factor to one's own awakening. That's why it can't happen in any amount of time, but only on the time and according to time that it can happen. So you have to learn how to really let things go. And you have to really learn non-attachment. And you have to really learn that life is not linear. And so take off the pressure of it looking a certain way. Or, I work with a lot of people who oftentimes in our deep work together, after years of deep work together, they may end up back living with their parents again, and objectively, or in a society that's like the success ladder looks like this, living with your parents is like, but to me and on the spiritual path, I'm like, bravo. There is so much work done when you go back into your parents' house. Whew. Some of the realest spiritual work you will ever do is in your parents' house. And it doesn't look like it from the outside in a world that has no context for the spiritual journey. People are like, you're living at your parents again. And then especially when you frame it that way, but it's not that at all. I feel like the bravest soldiers are the ones that go back and stay in their parents' house and do it again. Do it again. Rework the relationship, stand up in a different way, speak your truth in a different way. Whatever relationship you had with your parents, there's always work to do. There's always power to reclaim with your parental figures. And so whenever I hear of someone going back in their parents, I'm like, let's go. Let's go. I see what's going down here. And then you'll find that once you're in there, it's like you can't even get out of that circumstance until it's time. Because very rarely do people even have the opportunity to go stay with their parents again. So to have that, your soul's like, oh yeah, we're in, baby. Like, this is work that nothing else, no other life circumstance is going to be able to touch except staying at your parents' house again. Some of us don't even have the parents' house. So if you have that, or whatever you are, or wherever you are in your journey, even if it feels like going backwards, I hear that all the time in my work with my clients. It feels like they're going backwards because they're like back into a familiar setting, or maybe they've at least moved back into their home city or whatever it is. And, from the outside looking in, or in their minds, their mind has told them that it's going backwards. I'm like, it is not going backwards at all. Take out that linear thinking. You are a completely different person, picking up completely different codes, picking up completely different progress. So you have to let it be that. And on the whole path, you have to give yourself a lot of grace. Just as you would you have to baby yourself sometimes, even go into victim mode when you need to, consciously and skillfully. But, sometimes it is like, bro, like I put in all this work and here I am like moving back in with my parents. Like, how do you explain to a society, you guys, I've pretty much got this together now. And here you are like packing up to go stay at your parents again, right? Like those dots don't connect because you can't compare yourself to the humanity of it. You can't compare yourself to a 3D world that doesn't compare you and your 5D path. So there's a lot of grace. There's a lot of grace. And I want you to give yourself that. And I want us all to give ourselves that, because there's not one way to it. Your path is going to look like it looks, and it's up and down and around, and you're picking back up these and you're going back here and you're doing the same thing that you did before. And why is it that when you think it? No, that's all in your head. The path is going to be what it is, purposefully so. And there's not a second wasted on the spiritual path. So if you can just give yourself that and trust what it looks like, even when it's like, you don't feel like it's representing the work you've put in or whatever else, or when you have to explain to someone who has absolutely no idea why it would actually make sense for you to be moving back into your parents' house on the spiritual path, because you prioritize your spiritual evolution over 3D success. And most people are not even going to have any idea what you're talking about when you say that. You got to get really good at not fitting in and stop measuring yourself according to linear and other measurements that don't measure you. Once you do that, you're going to be a whole lot freer and a whole lot more able to be honest with just where you are. No judgment. There's no right or wrong. You know, you can be 44 years old moving back in with your parents because you have codes and clues and progress to be made. And you can't judge it because the judgment is just going to prolong the amount of time that you're there because you were too busy judging it to extract the gems of lessons that can only be found in your parents' house. So you got to let it all go, guys. You got to let go of any linear way of thinking about this path. You got to let go of any judgments you have against yourself or how you think this should go. And you really got to trust where you are and how it goes, and trust your path and trust your life. The spiritual path will never fail you. Never. There's no such thing. There's only evolution. There's only moreness. There's only making sure that when you're moving forward in wholeness. And if you need to go back to get the thing you left in the past, the part of you that was frozen in time as a result of what happened to you, go get it. And then keep going. Don't measure yourself according to 3D standards when you live in a 5D truth. You're just going to do yourself a disservice. All right. That's what I got. See you guys next time.